two MAPOGO males. It's getting very dark out here now as well. We're going to try and push it as far as we can, light-wise, but we're going to stick with them for a bit. They're still very fast asleep. Don't think they're going to move anywhere too soon, but let's see what they get up to, let's see what happens, and we'll also talk about what we've seen so far and experienced so far this afternoon a little bit in the form of some questions.
Hi, Peter, did you copy?
Yeah, so I copy you 5 out of 5.
Okay, I've got a question from Deb. Why would the Kahumas come back to this area knowing the Mapogos are a threat?
Deb, it's like all questions, an interesting one. Let me just try and get some light on them maybe for you, James. Might help a little bit when we go back on them. It's a case of, see, I can give you like a short answer which is easier, but a lot of these things, there's sort of a understanding behind rather than just an answer to the question. But it's a case of the Kahumas, they've got the area. Remember this morning we spoke a little bit about essentially you've got female prides, and they've got certain areas or territories set up, and that's a fixed area that they live in. Now that's obviously fluid, it's not a fixed area, it's not from this tree to that river to that mountain, even it can sometimes be almost that precise. That can change relative to conditions, relative to food, to other predator pressures, to water, to male activity as well. So the Kahuma pride have already changed their behavior quite a bit. I just thought the way James moves that the lion's moving. I thought it's going to stand up for us. They've already changed their area quite a bit. They've gone as far north as they can. But keep in mind there's also other lion prides around. So it's not just the Kahumas and the Mapogos. There are thousands of lions in Kruger, and they all form part of this ecosystem. So if they push too far, they're going to then start pushing into the neighboring area, and then they're going to start infringing another territory, another lion's resources, and then they'll have a whole set of other problems to deal with. So they can only move away so far. Now at the same time, the MAPOGO males are aware of the fact that there's females. They know there's lionesses around, they know there's cubs around, and they know that this is the area they want to take over, or have taken over. They've essentially already ousted the other males. So it's a case of cat and mouse, I guess, or cat and cat in this case, where it really is just a case of eventually the Mapogos will find those cubs and they'll kill them. I know that sounds very harsh. It's not something I'm not emotional about or not attached to in some way, but it really is what it boils down to. Those cubs will die. Some more of them might take a little bit longer than the others, but eventually these males will kill them. Just because there's no point in these males spending all the energy they have, taking all the risks they have. They've themselves come close to dying quite a few times. They've had severe injuries, as we can see now. They've had much worse injuries than that. So they've taken all that risk and expended all that energy to take this area over, and in that process hoping to father their own offspring, which will be quite spectacular lions, just to add that in. But they've got to take over this area. So the females don't really have much of a choice. They can postpone the inevitable by moving further north and trying to stay out of the area, like you asked, Ed, basically by trying to avoid these males. But keep in mind, these males cover a vast area, and they will go further north, and they will go in essence, they'll go anywhere that these Kahuma females might be. So what the Kahumas have got to do is try and avoid them, and they've been doing quite well, way more than I would have expected. It's already, I'm terrible with dates, but it was, James, I don't know, maybe you can remember, November sometime that they killed the one big male the first time. They killed one of the other cubs already in December, and that was already quite some time after I'd thought they would have gotten a hold of them. And then it's been months now since they actually had physical contact with the Kahuma females and the youngsters. They've got contact with the females, some of the females a few times. So, like I said, it's a bit of a long answer, but I hope this makes sense to everyone, because I'm sure that's a question that's on everyone's mind. Is for these females to avoid these males is impossible. Inevitably, they will come in contact with them, and inevitably they'll kill the cubs. The fact that the lioness is dead is not something that's typical. Normally the lionesses don't get killed in the same process. She must have just been a very fierce protector of the youngster at the time. So yeah, before I go on and on and on about the whole thing, I mean, there's so much going on in this respect. I think that answers the question well enough. Soon, and next one. Guys, we're
Okay, we've got a question from Daniel.
Yeah.
How many females do the Mapogos have, and how many cubs?
Okay, well, Daniel, interesting question once again. I'm going to stop saying interesting questions, they all are. Just to explain quickly, we are doing the utmost best that we can with the light conditions. We are now almost in darkness, so we will try and do as much as we can, but I think we all agree that it's better to stay here for now than to try and change cameras. So please do understand if it's a little bit different from usual. Daniel, just to answer the question is, I can't tell you exactly. To be honest, they've taken over a very large area. It goes much further south than we even have communication with the guides with, never mind being able to see ourselves. It goes as far south as south of the Sand River and a very large part of this reserve. So I can't say exactly how many females, but in excess of 15 or 20 probably if you add all the different female prides together. In terms of cubs, they would have almost no cubs of their own so far. Daniel, basically because they're still in this process, even though they've achieved most of it, of taking over a new territory. So they're still chasing males off. They've done most of that now. Now they're starting to assert themselves within these areas, make sure no other males come and challenge them, and also make sure that that the next offspring they do father are theirs. So none of the cubs that we're aware of at the moment are theirs, even though there would be quite a few females walking around with young Mapogos busy developing inside them. So in about the next month and a half or so, any lion cubs that are born in this vicinity would have been fathered by one of the Mapogos. I hope that answers that. Next one.
Yeah, from Joe in Washington. Assuming that the Lioness had any cubs who survived the incident, will the other surviving lionesses of the Kahuma pride suckle them?
Very good question, Joe. I was actually thinking of that earlier when we were looking at that lioness, and I didn't mention it. But Joe just wants to know what will happen essentially to the cubs if any of them survive from that lioness that's dead. Now that is something that is quite common. Like I said, the fact that those cubs were eaten is something that's not so common. But in terms of lionesses sometimes dying and leaving cubs behind, in this specific case from a takeover like this, but also from things like snake bite or in the Kalahari it happens often where gemsbuck injure the lionesses, or different antelope or buffalo. There's many ways that lions die out here. What we're seeing now, experiencing at the moment, is the exception to the rule. But Joe, to come back to the premise of that question, if cubs are left behind after the mother is dead, as long as they can keep up and stay with the pride, which they normally are able to do, other lionesses will suckle them. It's called allo-suckling. It's something that's quite common in lions, and any lioness will suckle pretty much any cubs or any of the cubs in the pride. Oh, he's going to give us a yawn. Look at that. The business end of a lion. Although smelling the car, I might have to change that. But Joe, so those cubs will have a very good chance of survival with the rest of the pride. Oh, they might get mobile for us. Oh, he's going to walk straight towards us. Look at that. He's going to walk very close past us as well. And Mr. T is the one of the punky hairstyle. I don't know this one.